It's the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Here's your host, Matthew Ablin.
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Queen City Music Podcast. This month, I'm pleased to have with me James McMahon, otherwise known as Mick, from Piedmont Artist Profiles. That's another podcast about the North Carolina local music scene. Hey, Mick, thanks for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. How you doing?
Good. So, for those just listening, I started the Queen City Music Podcast back in 2017, late 2017. So at some point, I get this message on my Facebook page, and it's from Mick, and he runs his own podcast called Piedmont Artist Profiles. So, Mick, what made you reach out to me about my podcast?
Well, like the whole theme or the underlying message of what I do is trying to just connect people. I want to see the art community in general, music in particular, kind of merge together. So anytime I see a new outlet like Louis Beeler with Tiny Stage, I mean, I think there's enough room for everybody, so there's no reason for us to not collaborate. So
right.
So as soon as every once in a while I'd go in my podcast search and just search for Charlotte. And anything that popped up, I'd check it out, and you had a music one. I'm like, perfect. So yeah, that's why I reached out.
Cool, man. Well, the podcasting community is kind of small. We were just talking about it before we've started recording, and if you're listening and you run a podcast, we both love to hear from you and find out what you're doing, because we'd like to meet up with other podcasters.
Yes, sir.
So you run the Piedmont Artist Profiles. What's your musical background?
Kind of the classic thing. My mom took me to music lessons in general when I was a kid. It was kind of this thing upstairs at Weathers Music, and he learned percussion and all these things, and that grew into piano. She's still a really amazing piano player. So I learned piano and worked my way into band and was first chair tenor sax and some of those things all the way through high school, and then started playing guitar around that time. And I'm pretty musically inclined. I got away from it for a while in my 20s.
Right.
And then when I got out of the Navy, I started really buying guitars again and playing again, and I just love playing. Never been much for a stageman or a performer. I prefer to be on the back end or producing. So, yeah, I mean, music genre-wise, I listen to everything from Bad Brains to punk rock to reggae to, I mean, you name it.
It's good, man.
Yeah.
And once you get bitten by the music bug, I don't think you ever really give it up.
No, it's something that's in you, and some people have it and some people don't. But I love music. I thrive on it. I'll sit back with headphones for hours and just listen to jazz that I've never heard before or whatever. So
there's so much to listen to. That's the other crazy thing about music. You start listening to one thing, and I start realizing late in life, I haven't listened to this group, or I kind of just listen to their hits. I never listened to their entire catalog.
Right.
I mean, I think it was really in my 40s, I'm dating myself, that I really started listening to Pink Floyd.
Right.
Like I knew kind of Dark Side of the Moon, and I knew this and I knew that. But man, in my 40s, I was like, I got to go check out their whole catalog. And it's amazing when you do that and listen to a band's progression from where they came from to where they are. It's kind of interesting. Yeah,
it is. And today I talk about it quite a bit because I think it's an interesting experiment in sociology or whatever. Our parents as bands only had so many rock gods because there's only like 3 generations of music like this. And if you think about recorded music, then you're only going back to, I think, like the 1860s or 70s when the monographs and stuff like that came around. So we haven't been doing this long, and look how much it's evolved in just this time. Yeah. The recording is a great thing. It's also an awful thing because there's a amount for musicians for perfection. Yeah. Because there's that added pressure that's going to be there forever, and to get it just right. And that kind of, in a sense, hurts live music because you expect to either go see the artist and it's exactly like the album, or some people, the complete opposite, they're disappointed that it is exactly like the album. They want some kind of change up, different guitar solo, a different key change, whatever, doing something different. So, all right, so let's move ahead. Man, we can sit here for 4 hours talking about music. All
Are you originally from the Charlotte area?
No, I'm originally from a small town in Oregon, Sublimity, Oregon, which is outside of Salem. Made my way through Charlotte through, I lived in Chicago, Pensacola, New Orleans for a while. Spent a lot of time in Southern California, and then ended up in Charlotte after I got out of the Navy. Wanted to get into NASCAR and follow that out here, and then did that for a while, and just I've always wanted to be involved in art and never saw a way into it. And when I got out of NASCAR, so one thing you learn in NASCAR is how the value of your personal brand,
right?
And branding and marketing is huge in that. My personal brand doesn't necessarily jive with what theirs is, so for me to be myself wasn't probably the best form.
Okay.
So when I got out, I say like I got out of prison or something, but when I got out of NASCAR, I had all this spare time because now I'm not traveling every weekend or anything else. So I like podcasts, and it just kind of came to me. I think it was at Old Town Public House one night listening to probably the Hawthorns or someone playing, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to do a podcast that covers local artists.
So Piedmont Artist Profiles, or PAP. is your first podcast?
Yeah.
That's neat.
Well, in the abbreviation, it's an unfortunate acronym, but I could never come up with anything that really said what it was about. You know what I mean? Like I had ideas like Mix Spits or something like that, but that would be a whole different show. So yeah, we settled on Piedmont Artist Profiles.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's going to be long or it's going to be short.
Yeah.
could be the Queen City Music Podcast. Yeah. Is exactly what it is. All right. So how long have you been doing the podcast for?
I think the first episode came out probably about a year ago.
Oh, okay. So it's relatively new.
Yeah, it's relatively new. I think podcast episodes, there's only like 26 of them out there.
So how often are you putting out content?
I was doing every week, and that got to be a burden. So it's been a learning process of what's the workflow, what's my process. I used to go into Audition and perfect everything and run parametric equalizers over things and compressors over things, and it sounded great.
Yeah,
but it was hours of work. Yeah. And so once I got kind of my effects chain and everything, then I just record it and run my processes, and then go through and cut out anything I don't like or don't need and upload it. So since it got easier, I was able to do them a little more frequently, but I took a couple of months off here and there, or a month at a time off, to just record.
Right.
And then I could put out my weekly episodes. But now the show is most Sundays. It's not every Sunday, but most Sundays at 3:30 we do the live stream video show.
Okay.
Which is then, and then I need to get on it. I need to take the audio off and put that up as the podcast. But
where's the video at?
It's right now it lives on YouTube, through my website or my Facebook page, is PiedmontArtistProfiles.com, which is also not very updated.
We'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
People want to
but we live stream on YouTube and we live stream on Twitch. I'm starting to learn more and more about Twitch. As a content provider, I'm not real happy with some of the changes YouTube's made, as far as how you get exposure and how you end up being discovered on YouTube is not, it's not cohesive to, it just doesn't work for the little guy anymore. So we're going to move to Twitch and eventually just stream on Twitch, and it's a little more friendly platform.
So, all right, let's backtrack just a little bit. We're jumping ahead of all this stuff,
and
that's fantastic. I love talking about it. So, what started you doing the podcast? I mean, you were out one night. What was there a thing that had you been listening to podcasts before?
Yeah. I've listened to talk radio most of my life. Growing up in Sublimity, you drive a lot of tractors, and when you drive a tractor all day, you can't listen to terrestrial music radio.
Right.
So I ended up listening to talk, NPR, sports talk, stuff like that. So then traveling with NASCAR, podcasts became my companion. I could fill my phone full of them and have something to listen to throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine, Steve Groves, who does a lot of web marketing and stuff like that, we were at Old Town Public House, and he's like, "Hey man, I got this Blue Yeti mic. We should try it. If you want to do one, let's try one." And so he came over, and I think I still have it somewhere. We just put the Blue Yeti in the middle of a table and talked.
Yeah.
And when we got done, I was like, man, I like that. And it just grew from there. And I think in about a month's time, I'd spent a couple $1,000s on mixers and mics and all this stuff. Yeah.
You don't have to go that crazy.
No, well, no, not for podcast. That's just how I am. Go big or go home. And then, he built like a little studio in the basement and had my first guests on, Shane Manier and Daniel Arthur Gurley.
You know, it's amazing. I listen to different podcasts and different people posting in podcast communities and things like that. And it's really interesting to me how podcasters run the gamut. There will either be some guy just running around with a handheld mic to just record something, and that's their podcast, or folks like you who are going to spend tons of money on gear because they want it to sound like a pro radio show.
Right.
And that's cool. I mean, it's just a different way of doing it. I mean, I've heard there was a guitar podcast. I won't even name the guy, but I like his show, but he does it from his car. Sometimes he's on his way to work. He puts his iPhone on and he records the podcast. I don't know if he really does much editing to it at all. And after a while, I just had to stop listening because I got tired of hearing the windshield wipers and the car turn.
All the
and I just couldn't. After a while, I was like, oh.
Well, I mean, even your phone records in 44 1K, so it's, I mean, audio quality is available on anything. I'm just a gearhead, and I like. So with the music, my idea was also, I want to be able to have people come in and play and be able to do that justice.
Cool. Yes.
And that's still been a process. I mean, the mics aren't really what I need and stuff like that. But yeah, my wife's probably not super excited about it.
I haven't put too much music into my podcast because one, it's still a young podcast. I put one of the musicians I know, a friend of mine, music educator, Kevin Brawley, and he was on a couple episodes ago, and I just embedded his music in. It was a lot easier than being like, hey, man, let's do a live performance.
Right.
So you get the sound quality you want. It's exactly the songs he's looking to do, you know, or promote, or whatever subject matter we were talking about. I found that a little bit easier. And then I could edit it down and say, okay, we're not going to do, you know, the 5-minute version of this tune. We're only going to put like a minute of it.
Right. Well, early on, I think a couple episodes we played people's, I think with The Lady Comes First, we watched their videos on one screen and then the audio came through. And it's just a lot of different ways to incorporate things. And some of the stuff I've bought, you know, has ended up not working, but I found other uses for it, and it's not going back.
So, what kind of artists do you have on PAP? Do you have just musicians, or is it like artists?
Well, it's geared for anybody. I mean, I've had a lot of spoken word and poets on there. I had Corn Dog the other day on, he's a Corn Dog Dyes. He does tie dye. He's one of the most amazing tie dye artists I've ever seen. Yeah. He don't give himself enough credit for what he does. I tried to have a blacksmith on, that just never worked out. I mean, it's just artists in general.
Couldn't find one?
No. I met a guy. He was at the Highland Games or whatever over in Cornelius.
Okay.
And it just never worked out to have him on. There's a nude self-portraitist who she's a wanderer, so she's never in the area, but if we try to work it out, sooner or later I'm going to get her on the show because she does some pretty amazing work. It's really tasteful, and it's cool because, you know, she has to do the pose and then has to take the picture, and everything has to work out.
Right.
And so I'm fascinated by that. Plus she's a nomad, and I'm fascinated by the nomadic lifestyle.
I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
I'm really a homebody.
I kind of am, but my dad just recently started doing it, and he loves it.
And it's why I could never be a touring musician. I tell the story of how I never toured, and that's fine. The farthest I've ever gotten of traveling, or longest, was years ago. I went cross country with an old girlfriend. We went for 2 weeks. I tell you what, I couldn't wait to get home. I wanted to be in my own bed. I wanted to cook my own food. I was like, I am done driving. I don't think I could sit in a tour bus, man.
Are you from Charlotte originally too?
No, I'm originally from New York, and I was in Cleveland for a number of years, and then I came down here for my job as an educator. So, I think Charlotte's full of transplants.
It really is, and I think that's kind of the beauty of it, and that's why. Every time I meet a new artist in Charlotte, it's like opening up a new door full of other artists.
Right.
And, you know, what's kind of interesting about it is when I got into it, I was like, Charlotte, I thought to myself, and I was so wrong, but I thought Charlotte doesn't have really much of a music scene because it's not in your face. If you're not in it, you don't see it because you're told to go to Uptown, you're told to go to the Epicenter.
Right.
And these kinds of things. And until you get down into Plaza Midwood or Noda or South End, and you go to the Milestone, and you like, there's a ton of bands here,
I think, well, the problem is when people say there's no music scene, what I've encountered, because I mean, this is what I do a lot of covers. So the cover groups I play with, I gig a lot, but I think it's the original music scene.
For struggles.
Yeah, it's a real struggle because people don't support it. Nobody's running out on a Friday night going to say, hey, I want to see this new live band.
Yeah.
And I guess traditionally, support for a live music scene has been younger people. And younger people today have a lot more outside influences, things that take them away from going to a concert or going to a show.
And when they go to the show, they got their phone out the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my mission too, is to expose these bands. And so I'm starting to do things like Spotify playlists where I'll take a local band who's on Spotify and maybe pair them up with a few national bands that sound similar. And then I could put the playlist out like, hey, if you like this band, you should check out these guys that are local. Because my thought process behind the whole thing and kind of my selling point that I want to pitch to the millennials, quote unquote, is, if you're shopping at a farmer's market because you support a local economy, then you should source your art locally as well.
True.
I mean, these people most of them are living, hand to mouth because they're trying to gig as much as they can. So that takes away from them having an actual career. So they're just working odd jobs. And some of these people are amazing. I mean, there's bands here, the Hawthorns and Gonzo, Late Night Special, Lisa DeNovo. There's so many that if they could just get the right
you got to put me in touch with some folks.
Oh, I will.
Emails, be like, hey, shoot me an email and put
I'll
their
give you a
names on
list.
and be like, I've just started. I mean, I had a few people or a few places, everything. If you look at my podcast, certain people I wanted to get on the podcast. I was real happy this month, which just got uploaded. Well, previous month now, by the time you listen to this, is Bill Hanna. He's a local jazz staple. Is my cat coughing out there? I don't know what he's doing.
I think it might have been my shoe.
Okay. So, but I've certain things I wanted to kind of highlight because with my show, I don't just do musicians. It's music related. So I went to 202 North Main. I've interviewed Dan Guerreri down at CPCC for the audio recording program. So it all has to do with music, but it's not just every week you're going to have some singer-songwriter on.
Right.
I'm trying to jump out the styles a little bit too.
Well, and that would be beneficial for the artist to listen to.
Sure.
I think that's another. It's not I haven't had a guest on like it, but I've thought a lot about having people that are in merchandising or having people that are in promotions come on and talk about what is it for you as a promoter that makes you gravitate towards a band and go, like, is it because they're on time? Is it because the music? Is that they like? What can these guys do to really catch a promoter's eye or a venue owner's eye? And so they should definitely be listening to your show as well.
Hope so. Hopefully you'll put stuff out and people will be like, oh, Queen City Music Podcast.
I will.
Check that out.
Actually, here this afternoon, I'm probably going to be down at so there's a local band called Gonzo who is amazing. So much energy in that band. Such a great group of guys. Super talented musicians.
Right.
And they got a little spot out in Matthews called the Gonzoplex. It's cool. It's so cool. So first Saturday of every month, they do a open jam for local musicians. And you'll go there and musicians from all of the best bands in Charlotte will be there jamming. And it's so much fun. So I'll pump up the podcast to all of them and
tell them to reach out to me.
Yeah.
I just started last month putting on the tail end of the podcast, reach out, say hello if you're interested in being on the podcast. Cause I don't know everybody, I know you live in your own little bubble and I know certain people. So the more people I get exposed to can come in and do it, is better for me and better for Charlotte to get exposed to those folks.
That's how it grows, man.
So
if you are a musician and you're listening to this, if you reach out to me at my Facebook page, Piedmont Artist Profiles, or Gonzo CLT, I think they are on Facebook, reach out to them and get the information. It's pretty much open to anyone artist. They just don't make it public because you don't want a bunch of fans and stuff there. It's a small room as it is, but there's a lady that comes out there who teaches vocals at Berkeley, I think, jazz.
Oh, wonderful!
Like she'll work with music. Last time she brought balloons and was showing people how to breathe through their diaphragm and how to get these lower notes. And it's just cool to see this community of people like help each other. Versus some cities you go to, there's a real cutthroat between artists. And I think this city has this cool community where everyone kind of helps each other. And hey, man, can you gig with us? Can and help lift everybody up.
I think the more Charlotte starts to grow, the independent music community with original music will start to grow too. And hopefully some of the venues, start to support that and say, hey, we love our covers, but we also see a need to establish a original scene too.
Right. And there's some venues that are really, really good with that. Case, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, over at Old Town Public House, and Cornelius does a great job promoting local artists, especially young artists. And then the guys down at Evening Muse stick pretty local, and so there's some spots that for sure go out of their way to help promote music, local music. And then some of the bigger venues they have so much power as far as booking when they get a national act.
Right.
Dude, they could do so much good for these bands if they just brought 2 of them on to open. But they don't do that. They, whatever. Live Nation's bought everything. It's killing music.
Yeah, and then some of the local places are closing up too.
Yeah.
Which
It's hard.
is kind of sad.
You're running on a thin margin.
Yeah.
And the liquor permit's hard to keep up, especially if you're having live music and you end up having fights and things out on the streets, which, you hope to not have, but
yeah,
it doesn't take much for them to pull your liquor license in this county. So,
and then plus you get bought out and they're putting up condos.
yeah. Yeah. And so that's the crowd I really want to grab. If you've got the coin to spend that on a condo or whatever in a neighborhood that you moved to because it's a funky art community, well, just remember that those people lost their area or their homes because you built that. So support them. Go out and buy their pictures and listen to their poetry. It's just as good as anything you're going to buy anywhere else.
True.
And the music is, there's not really a name you can put on the music here. It's because of the confluence of influences. It's just, it's everything at once. It's Southern rock with funk and hip hop all in one band. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've got to dig even more into the original music scene. I mean, I get into my own little bubble. So I'm busy doing my own music. I'm doing recording classes and writing my own stuff and gigging and teaching. So it's like, I have this little bubble and I'm like, I don't have time.
Yeah.
Every time. And when I get something like spring break happening, I'm like, I gotta relax. Get caught up on all the stuff I didn't do yet. So, but doing the podcast helps, and meeting folks like you get me out and say, okay, go do this, go do that. So that's a good thing for me. All right. So how do you figure out who you want to have on your podcast?
It kind of ends up being word of mouth, but it usually it's people that I've met through channels and just, hey man, can you come on the show this day and this day? So now with the live video show, I kind of try to book a month ahead of time. And I found Sunday afternoons are probably the best for artists because nobody's really gigging. They've gigged and I do it late on a Sunday, so they're waking up finally. And there's not really a criteria. I do try to make sure that these are people with published music that people can go find.
Okay.
Just because I'm not trying to break new artists kind of thing. Right. It's best if they're kind of a little more established. It's not a knock on people who aren't, but it just helps the show flow and get an audience, and that helps everybody in the end. So there's not really a criteria, I guess, but I have to like it. Right? Like there's a there's a like the music, natural bias there. There's bands that I've turned down because I just don't care for their stuff, and I don't really have a problem doing that. I don't feel bad.
I just want nice people.
Yeah. Well, there's that too. There's people I've run into that just weren't nice. They weren't engaging, kind of snobby, which doesn't make sense because,
right.
Like I was having this conversation with a friend who's in a band yesterday, and you don't get to be, no matter how good you are, you don't get to be arrogant until you reach a very, very, very high level.
That's true.
And even then you shouldn't, but you don't get to, like, oh, we're not going to play with this band because we're better. Well, come on, man, really? Yeah. You were there at one point,
but you're still here.
Yeah, and you're still here. That's the other thing. We won't even get into the fact that you're not touring either.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, with musicians, there's a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. One of them, besides you have the fact of personality quirks, mm-hmm. you have musicians who don't even have their stuff together. Yeah. I'm not knocking anybody, I mean, being a musician, but I mean, it's just stuff I've noticed over the years. Mm-hmm. People want to work. They could be the greatest musician, but they don't have their stuff together. Mm-hmm. They don't have a car. They can't handle money. They can't file an appointment. They don't know how to talk to somebody.
Right.
They're not personable.
Mm-hmm.
2, they can't work with other musicians. So, I mean, just being a musician is wonderful, but I mean, to be able to work and make a living at it, you got to put a lot of, there's got to be a lot behind it. It's not just, I could play my instrument well.
Well, it's still a job.
Yeah.
And to do it like that, that's where the managers and PR people can fall into place. But you got to get to a point where people want to work with you in the first place.
Yeah. Nobody wants to work with a princess.
No.
I mean,
no.
Even Madonna wasn't Madonna before she became Madonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of bands I tend to gravitate towards anyway, are people that work their way up the ladder.
Yeah.
Versus, I just despise pop music. There's no way to hide it.
Yeah.
Anything with auto-tune, like we were talking about before with how perfect music can be now. I hate it. It's something about when it's in perfect time and that they just went in there in Pro Tools and like, okay, we're going to line all this up. Okay, here,
Yes.
I want it raw. I want the lipstick off.
It's funny you say that. I was watching the Grammys that was recently on. So I think it was the opening of it. So 3 performers doing tunes. John Baptiste, Gary Clark Jr., and then the unknown drummer, who I call him because they didn't introduce who he was. He was just playing. He was just playing with them. So these guys come out and they're playing live.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I was like, fantastic. They finally got some live music on there. Then the next group they cut to is some K-pop, Korean pop group. And they've got the fake microphone, not fake mic. They got microphones on and they're dancing around and they're lip syncing everything and dancing. And they have a whole bunch of, in my mind, paid people to be at the front screaming and shouting. They're so paid. Wonderful. And I thought, no, I want to go back to the guys who are actually doing it.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the guys faking it and dancing it up there. And it amazes me that if there are people who even exist who don't realize that is all fake.
It drives me nuts.
I'm like, really?
It drives me nuts because you want to be like, we're everyone sees this, like we're all catching on, right? That this is all fake. And then, but you look over and you're enjoying this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's bad.
Music has become a lot of ear candy, at least in my mind today. And part of the problem with it is that there are too many people buying it, even adults. There's not a lot of substance to the music.
Oh yeah, look at what has happened to country music.
Yeah,
which is not. Growing up where I did, I was surrounded by country music. Was never a huge fan, but
right.
I won't name bands, but there's just garbage.
Yeah,
like and now they're like taking hip hop and putting it in country, and it's like, stop, man, what are you doing?
Yeah,
I just don't get it. It makes me sad. But there is good music out there, especially at the local level. There's still good stuff out there. You just got to dig. They don't want you to see it, I feel like. Whoever they are.
It's not going to sell.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if there's a they anymore because the industry's been so upheaved, if that's the correct word.
Yeah.
That you don't know who people are because there's no major conglomerate or record company to promote and develop the artist. Now there's lots of little folks or little musicians, and they're all competing for those same spots. They've all putting out their own independent EPs. They're all got their own website. They're all doing house concerts. They're all doing this. So that might be the beautiful thing about the local music scene.
Yeah, is
that you have enough people going out to support that local music scene that it pushes up those artists who are gonna survive on a national, a regional, a local, regional, and then national level, and then hopefully international.
It's
level.
like a farm system in baseball.
Yeah.
And self-publishing's kind of done that. It's made it so that anybody can put their stuff out there. But like you said, there's nobody really pushing it, and it's just algorithms in Spotify that's pushing the music that gets the clicks it's I don't know what the solution is because I love self-publishing. I think it's beautiful. But what I think it's kind of done is it's leveled the playing field where overall I think you're going to see it, like a lot more people making a living at music, but not getting the rock star status.
Well, those people never made that much. There weren't that many of them anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
you think they got the money, but it was just an advance and they paid it all back.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, I had this conversation with somebody, and I remember listening to a podcast, so it's not solely my original idea. But if you go back in history to the history of music, there's very few stars. Even you go back to Mozart's time.
Yeah, there's not much.
There's even Mozart lived in poverty, most of his life as a musician.
It's true.
And you have the golden age of music where, I mean, people are making millions of dollars, probably from the 50s, or even if you want to extend it back to the beginning of the jazz era in the 20s, where you had certain superstars making a lot of money. So maybe you have a 50 to 80 year span where people are making lots and lots of money doing it.
Right.
But that's not, historically, that's not the case.
That's true.
We'd like to think everybody made, I'd make $1 million doing this. No, most musicians are just working everyday musicians. You take somebody, say it again, you go back to Bach now. He worked for somebody who paid him a salary.
Right. Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. So back then there was patrons of art, and I think that's, there's Patreon now and some things which a lot of people aren't on, but I think that can be the new way, is that your fans support you, and you're a patron of the art. I consider myself a patron of the art. I don't consider myself an artist, but when I go out, I try to buy the CDs, I try to buy downloads, I make sure I buy beers, I make sure I tip the bartender.
I make sure I throw some money in the tip jar for the musicians.
Yeah, throw the tip jar. I mean, you do the whole thing.
Wait, hold on. Applaud,
yes.
Because a lot of folks in Charlotte don't do that.
No.
They will sit and, I mean, I'm doing covers and I know I'm background music, but man, people don't even, they didn't
even acknowledge you.
Dude, I can't even tell you how many times we've been playing, right? And nobody applauds. And then as soon as a particular party of folks who are, sitting at a table get up to leave, somebody will come over and be like, you guys are awesome.
Yeah.
And we're like,
why didn't you thank us while we were playing?
Yeah, why did you applaud?
Yeah.
So
the other thing that drives me nuts is a lot of, they'll put a lot of music in coffee houses and like tap rooms.
Sure.
But it's like, as the band plays louder, people try to talk over the music.
Yeah.
And I get it, because it's maybe not solely a music venue, but it's like, let's just listen to the music, man. Like, quit trying to talk louder. I do help these people out in Salisbury. We do an old time radio hour. It's an old school radio type show. It's at a brewery. I wish I knew the name right now, Ridgewalk or something. But there's this particular group of women that are there every single time, and they're not there for the show. They're there because it's after yoga or something, and they sit at the corner of the bar, and they're trying to do a spoken word old time radio show. And these people just talk louder and louder and laugh, and they have no regard for the people that are putting on a show, and it's frustrating.
It is.
It's a lack of respect, and I don't know.
And once again, though, I got to say, it wasn't always like that, but I think on some level it was.
Yeah.
If you're not going there to see your favorite artist, that's it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you go see your favorite artist at the PNC Pavilion, if the artist was to turn down, you'd probably hear a lot of conversations
They're
going on.
so freaking loud. It does. Maybe I'm getting old, but sometimes live. Man, I went to the Fillmore for, I can't remember who. It was National Act. My wife drugged me out. And it was just so loud. There's a point where music, like your eardrums are saturated with sound, and it's like, now it's just distorted in my head.
Yeah, man.
It's not working.
I don't go to live shows or big live shows anymore without earplugs. I don't want to be blown out. I'll take,
I don't understand why the sound guy does that. Why wouldn't you just back it down just a little bit where it's a little more clarity? I understand outdoors where you're trying to get it to the people in the back.
Yeah.
But when you're in a room, like the Fillmore is a great room for sound.
Yeah.
You don't have to be super loud in there.
Right.
To have it sound good. But it's loud.
Don't ask me. I'm fine with it the way it is. I saw Motorhead there, so
wow, I bet that was loud.
That is allowed. they were loud, they thrive on it. And if you went there without earplugs, man, you walked away for a day or so with injured ears. So anyway, you've started moving away from the regular audio podcast, and you're going into video now. What's happening with that?
It's sort of a natural evolution of it. I have friends who are in videography, and it's something I've always been interested in. And the realization really that my phone was a 4K camera kind of opened the doors. I started filming things. I got a gimbal. Right. And then I started really thinking about the show, and I really like doing it live. I'm not good at it yet. But that was kind of the vision. Like, well, we can just do this with cameras. Well, then I'm going to do it live. I can stream it.
Right.
it comes down to, originally I was very tied to Facebook, which I'm starting to step away from. And Facebook loves you to put up live videos. They love the Facebook Live feature. You don't have to put any money on the post for it to get traction. And it just kind of grew from there. And then I've discovered this OBS studio.
Man, I should have did that while we were talking.
What's that?
Should have did it with live Facebook.
Yeah. Put a camera in the corner. But I discovered this OBS studio, which you can basically turn a PC into a TV production room, and you can do overlays and transitions and bring in different audio sources.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I've just gotten carried away. I'm a geek. When it comes down to it, I'm a geek on this stuff.
I'm going to come over and you're going to have to show me stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, you definitely need to be on the show for sure.
Get it going. Yeah, man, because like I said, you're in a world into yourself, so I'm doing my own little thing and I meet people here and there, but to meet another podcaster who's been doing it longer than I have.
Barely longer than you.
Yeah, but you're doing what you do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I learned from somebody else. I mean, when I was first getting into podcasts, and I was listening to podcasts about how to podcast.
Oh yeah, Chris Ravenscraft and all those guys.
Yeah, I was listening to Better Podcasting. Good show, good, smart guys. And I was like, all right, what is hosting? How does that work? What's this about? I mean, the basic recording is like microphone, software, you're done.
Done, yeah.
But what's the ins and outs of, do you want to get a logo? How do you do all that kind of stuff? And I was like, oh, you know what? I got to get into that.
Right.
So there's a lot to learn.
Well, and it's for me at that point in my life or job or whatever, I pretty much knew what I was doing. So to have something new and I was passionate about to learn, because I love learning. I love learning new things. And sometimes you get stagnant at work. It's like, I know how to do all this. And then you go home and you whatever.
Watch TV.
I luckily not very guilty of that. My TV generally just has a screenshot of whatever's playing through my audio player.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Sometimes I watch a little too much, but it's my break from music. I'm like,
yeah.
Need something just away from music for a little while.
I bet.
Dude, I mean, I'm teaching, I'm playing, I'm writing, I'm podcasting. Everything is music, which is great. I love it. I'm not complaining. Sometimes as a musician, you just need to get away from that. And say,
well, in everything in life, you need balance and diversity.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah,
that is true. So what's up next for your podcast or your vlog or whatever we're going to call it?
Next up, I'm going to spend the rest of today, because it's nice and raining, I'm going to lock myself in the basement and rip all the audio off the video and put those up as podcasts. I'm going to get my website updated. I was going to kill the website, but it auto-renewed anyway for a year. So
what are you on?
PiedmontArtsProfiles.com. It's just a GoDaddy.
You have your own
GoDaddy WordPress site.
All right.
I was doing blogs and stuff, and if anyone's listening to this, I would love to have people provide content. I'll put it up. If you guys write stuff, do videos, whatever, I'll put it up on my website. I can't write enough blogs to keep it full. You know what I mean? Like if more people that would chip in, the better. I've published some poems of people up there, and but yeah, going forward, big things we're going to try to do. There's a couple music festivals we're going to try to cover. One of them being Surrounded by the Sound, which is in August. That's a East Coast reggae festival. And
so you guys go far out with it, kind of far out.
Yeah, I like doing the festival thing. I like setting my booth up. I set up my basement, the studio.
That's great.
Like under an easy up and hang out, but kind of have like a green room kind of thing for the artists and stuff. But yeah, every Sunday at 3:30 going forward, hopefully. I mean, there's some Sundays I take it off. I think what I'm going to probably do is book 3 guests a month and take one Sunday off. So that way I have a weekend where it's myself.
Cool.
But yeah, that's it.
So how do we reach you? How do we get in touch with Piedmont Artist Profiles?
The best way, the way I'm most responsive, unfortunately, is still through Facebook, Piedmont Artist Profiles Facebook page. There's also PiedmontArtsProfiles.com, which you can check out. There's a lot of stuff on there. It's just, I don't think I've updated it since Groundhog's Day. I think that's the last blog post I put up.
Wow.
And then we're on YouTube, Piedmont Arts Profiles on YouTube, and Snow Peak Studios on YouTube too, which is the name of the production company that there's going to be a lot of things coming out that have nothing to do with this in the future.
Right.
Some other video projects, working on a mini doc with my brother on our family history and stuff. So check out Snow Peak Studios and Piedmont Arts Profiles both.
Awesome. And if you are a podcaster in Charlotte, reach out to me and Mick. We want to get to know the other podcasters. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be music related or just art related. We want to hear from you and maybe get our own little podcasting community of folks together.
That'd be cool.
All right, cool. Well, thanks again, Mick. I appreciate you coming on.
For sure.
All right, have a great day.
You too, man.
Bye. And that'll bring episode 8 of the Queen City Music Podcast to a close. If you'd like to be a guest on the Queen City Music Podcast, please drop me a line at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com, or you can check us out on our Facebook page, facebook.com/QC Music Podcast. Until next month, have a great day. Bye-bye.